Good morning and welcome to our Backpack to Briefcase Senior Series. We're excited to talk in this episode about managing up. My name is Tanya Davis and I'm the Director of Corporate Relations here at the Huntsman School of Business. In my role, I have the great pleasure of working with our Huntsman School Young Alumni Board. And today we're excited to welcome two members of our Young Alumni Board. First, we have Blake Nemelka, who earned a master's degree in higher education administration at Vanderbilt and a PhD at Purdue after leaving Utah State. Blake has an extensive background in higher education and is currently at Western Governors University managing strategy and development. We also have Doug Fiefia, who served in many leadership roles during his years at USU, including 2 terms as student body president. Doug went on to get an MBA at Rice University's Jones School of Business, where he served as the MBA program's president and is currently at Google as manager for Google Customer Solutions. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here today. I'm very excited to dig into this topic. I think it's very important. I think managing up, or as some people might say, managing your manager, is critical to being successful in any role. I've worked with both of these gentlemen enough to know that both of them understand the importance of managing up and are very skilled in this area. Before we get started, for those who are watching live, please leave your comments and questions in the chat and we can address those as we go. And we'll go ahead and get started with the first question. So thanks for being here again, both of you. And the first question I want to start with is, what does managing up mean to you? Blake, let's start with you.
Okay, well, it's good to see Tanya and Doug. Doug and I were at school together, so it's fun to think back on those days. And hi to all the students watching. I miss my time in Logan. Okay, so I'm glad that you guys, sent us these questions, and I've been able to think about it this week. And I think what it boils down to for me is that managing up is the relationship between myself and my manager, right? And for me, what it means is that I'm providing 3 things. And I think the order of those 3 things matters. Number 3 is my opinion. He or she expects me, he in this case, my current boss, expects me to have an opinion on things. I was hired for that opinion. Number 2, and more importantly, is data. That I'm always prepared with the right data, good sourced data, so that he can make the decisions he needs to make. And number 1, and the most important, is results. So it doesn't matter what my opinion is or how good my data is if the results aren't coming in. So that I was trying to boil everything down. I think those are the 3 things that it came down to for me.
I love all 3 of those. Those are great insights. Thanks, Blake. How about you, Doug? What does managing up mean to you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Tanya. Thanks for having me, Blake. It's good to see you again. In I guess addition to what Blake said, agree with those 3 points. I love those 3. I've written some of them down and things that I can work on personally. But I think when you think of managing up and you boil it down to just a simple phrase, is thinking about how you can make your manager's life easier. I think that's like an easy way to think about how you approach managing up. In sales, we talk about working with customers and bringing a value proposition. And I think the same is in this case is when working with managers. You have to think about, one, put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself the question, what's in it for me, as if you're your manager, right? Your manager can either be someone who has to micromanage you and follow up and check up on assignments and ask for that data that Blake talks about, and follow up on results and see if you've done what you're supposed to. Or they can be kind of sitting back and you bring that information, you bring that data, you bring the results. And there's a difference in the way a manager sees you as an employee, sees you as a contributor. If you're the second type of employee, that you're the proactive person bringing that information and constantly fulfilling that question of what's in it for me as your manager.
And wouldn't you agree, Doug, that the people who do this best at work, and I'm still trying to be this way, but they almost anticipate what the leader needs before they even know they need it. So it's one thing to be told, hey, I need this kind of data, hit your deadline early, get it to them. Great, right? They shouldn't have to tell you to do that. That's so basic. But the really good people are like, well, he doesn't know about this thing that's coming out in this article, so I'm going to also include these in the appendices. And then it's like, I don't know, there's an anticipation factor, wouldn't you say?
For sure. That proactiveness and thinking about the problems or the gaps that they're unaware of, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
is critical and key. And the people that are able to do that to me as their manager, and I know that when I've done that in some cases for my manager, you just see the light bulb go off of like, oh man, I didn't think about that. Thank you so much for proactively doing that.
Yeah.
Yes, let's move forward. And then what happens from that is if you're proactive in bringing that data, bringing that information, typically those lead into opportunities, right? Because they're like, well, you're the
Oh, yeah.
person who brought that to me.
Yep.
Why don't you take lead on this? This is a great initiative. And then that gives you different opportunities. And it could be not only gaps that your manager isn't seeing, but it could be things that you're
Yeah.
passionate about that you're like, hey, we should be focused on this. Let me put together this business case or this report, present it to my manager, and see if this is something that I could lead out from our team.
Yeah. And I had a girl that worked for me, and she's like, I hope this isn't creepy, but she like would look at my calendar ahead of time and like prep stuff for me that I didn't even know I needed. And oh, you can better believe that she got promoted fast. Like that was so intelligent. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
that.
that's a really great skill. I think that the ability to anticipate what your manager might need and provide that is key. That's a great point. So I think communication is part of that as well. The ability to communicate well with your manager. How do you handle communicating with your manager? I think sometimes there's a fine line between sending too much information and not sending enough. So what's your philosophy there? Maybe we can start with Doug this time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question of like the balance of over communicating while not sending enough. I always err on the side of over communicating until my boss says, okay, that's good. I appreciate it. And I kind of catch the social cues or maybe an email that says like, oh, that's enough. Or, hey, you don't have to put all that together. I always like to over communicate because I think typically I find in even people that I manage, people think that they over communicate or they're sending too much. But the reality is that even if I don't have the time to read it as a manager, I will go back. If I can't read it in that moment, I'll go back and read it. And so I always like to err on the side of over communicating. And I think also a part of that is documenting your impact. Like sending an email and sharing like what you did on a weekly basis, a weekly report to your manager, I think is a great practice. Not only to let them know what you're doing, but also it's just when it comes around to performance management, when it comes to interviewing for another position or even promotion, they have everything documented there. And they can go back and refer to your weekly reports of like, okay, what has Doug done in the last quarter or the last 2 quarters or the last year? They have a weekly report from you every single week documenting that. And so I always like to over communicate not only in one-on-ones but also in um, in email so that there is a paper trail.
I love that you brought out that weekly report. So I manage a team here at the Huntsman School, and it's so helpful for me if I get a weekly report from anybody on my team. It just kind of makes me feel like I don't have to get involved in much as making sure I know what they're doing. It's all right there for me. If I have any thoughts about any of the items on that list, I can follow up on those, and it makes it very easy. So I'm really happy you brought that up. Blake, what about you? How do you handle communication with a manager?
Yeah, that was really good. I'm taking my own notes here. I loved err on the side of over communicating. I'm a huge over communicator. Don't wait, right? Don't wait to send the weekly report. Don't wait to be asked. They can tell you when to stop, but I can guarantee you, Tanya, that you love the employees that have that, proactive attitude mentality versus those that you're like, hey, I haven't heard about this project in a while. I need to find out. You shouldn't, as the boss, ever have to wonder what the status of something is. Now, I think it's on the boss to have a system, right, and to market that system among their employees. Doug kind of threw out a gem there, right in the middle. Social cues, right? That is such an intangible, hard to teach thing, and it took me a while to get into the groove of what that means. But essentially, what it is paying attention to the cues in the workplace, the social cues of how this supervisor or leaders communicate and matching that style. And so the last thing I'll say is that use the systems they use, right? Based off those social cues or whatever you were trained on. I came into Western Governors University, 7,000 employees, world's largest university. They obviously have something figured out. It's Microsoft Teams and it's Pivotal Tracker. Microsoft Teams does everything with phone calling and chats and meetings, and Pivotal Tracker is a kind of a lean management operational system for project managers. And whether I've used Trello in the past or TaskRay, I feel like those employees who don't go all in and learn it and use it really end up failing. We're kind of moving away from email internally at companies, and so I'd say, get really good at that internal communication.
Yeah,
just another note, Blake. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, just on the social cues, they'll tell you, right? I think not all bosses are as straightforward as like, this is what I need, this is what I like to see. Yeah. But if you're doing a weekly report and you notice they're not reading it, then maybe you need to change or switch things, right? And maybe it's just in a one-on-one, you say, hey, Tanya, I'm not sure if you've seen my weekly report. I'd like to just make sure that it's important and impactful for you. What's the most important information that you need to know on the job or on the work that I'm doing and the projects that I'm working on? And then Tanya would respond and tell me what's most important. And then you adjust that weekly report, right? Then you can just say, okay, you know that she just wants a couple of lines and that's it. Then you adjust, right? And so it's important that you're not just finding your own kind of path, similar to what Blake is saying. Learn the internal systems, learn what your manager wants, and then adapt your communication style to match that. Yeah.
You actually transitioned perfectly into my next question, which, there are oftentimes systems set in place, but not every manager is great at just outwardly communicating their managerial style or philosophy. So what are some of the questions that you can ask your supervisor in addition to, how can I communicate with you? What are some of the other questions you can ask to kind of learn what is their managerial style or philosophy and how's the best way to work with them? Blake, do you want to take a shot at that first?
Sure. Yeah, this may be oversimplified, but kind of jumping off what Doug said is just ask them, right? It's completely fair and normal to sit down with that supervisor and say, hey, I'd love to know, what is your management style? What's your philosophy? How can I best work within that? Now, that's a little oversimplified. One of the more, I guess, investigative ways that I've done this in the past with my supervisors is I look at what books they read, right? I try to look at their Strengths Finder report or their Myers-Briggs assessment. Usually there's some sort of aptitude or leadership assessment that managers are cultivating within their culture. So really dig into it, right? I just printed off a report this morning for all of the contributing factors to my own manager's what he filled out in an assessment. So it's on me to read this 10-page report and change my communication style. I hope that kind of helps answer that question.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of things to that. I wrote down a few questions that I've asked my manager and that have helped me adapt my communication style and the way that I manage up. So a couple of questions that I've used in the past is what they ultimately want to accomplish. I want to understand their goals. What do you see for our team in the next year and the next 2-3 years? And that way you can get a grasp of what's important to them, how they're planning, how they're working. And then when we've talked about filling in those gaps, you know where they're going and the direction they're going, and you can find the projects and the initiatives that you need to bring that data for proactively. I think Blake hit on this, the preference of communication styles, right? Do they prefer a text? Do they prefer a ping? Do they prefer an email? Do they prefer using Trello and just communicating through that? What are their preferences for communication? That's super important. What's their definition of success is an important question. Another question I like to ask is what keeps them up at night, right? You can really dive in deep into someone's worries, and that dives into like, how do I help you solve the problems that keep you up at night? The other thing is just like how how open they are to feedback, how they take feedback. It is a little bit weird asking a manager. Typically, managers say, they don't all believe this, but they say they love feedback, they want to hear it. And so having that discussion early and often is something that I think you can get cues of, like, do they really want my feedback? Is this something that, like, I can openly talk about, or is this something that I need to just maybe adjust my working style dependent on how you feel about my work or the team's performance. So these questions, again, there's a lot of social cues. This takes a lot of EQ. Sometimes managers will openly say, this is how I feel, this is what I want. And sometimes managers are not as open, and I've had both types of managers. And so it's important to really ask these questions and not be afraid to dig deeper with managers. If there's something that you've asked and they're not being upfront, ask a follow-up question, dive deeper. And again, if they're still not forthcoming, then you know their communication style, and you can adjust the way that you work with them.
Great points. I love the question of what keeps you up at night. And it doesn't even have to be, it can be even more simple than that. I have a team member who routinely comes in kind of as he's checking out for the day and sits in my chair and just says, is there anything I can do for you? Anything I can take off your plate today before I go? And I love that. Even if I don't have anything that I really need help with, just the thought that he has thought about that and stopped by is so helpful to me. Okay, so let's move on. I think you don't need to be best friends with your manager, but it's always helpful to have a positive relationship. So what are some of the things that you have done to create a positive relationship with a manager, especially if maybe you didn't kind of click with them right away?
I'll go ahead and jump in here. I think the first thing is pretty simple, is like relationship 101, is just getting to know your boss. They're regular people. There's studies that show that people like them. And so find out what they care about, right? Write down their favorite sports teams, their favorite foods, if they have kids, what their kids like, know when their birthday is. And it's the same as I would manage someone, and knowing someone, what they care about. You have to really get to know them personally and professionally. You don't have to be best friends, but it's important that when you enter into these meetings with them, when you have lunches with them or one-off conversations, that you know what they care about and you can talk about those things. Um, Again, you don't have to be super, super close, but the more that you're able to dive into those topics that they care about, and what, not only professionally but personally, you're able to build that real strong relationship, and it will help you in the long term of your career.
I think knowing about them too allows you to kind of understand what some of their external challenges might be. So, for me, I'm a working mom, and a lot of my team members ask me all the time about my kids, but I think just knowing me well enough has helped them understand why I might be a little bit stressed out first thing in the morning, having gotten all the kids off to school and just kind of being, ugh. They understand that because they know that about me. So I love all of those points, Doug. What about you, Blake?
Yeah, I those are great points, and I feel like being genuine, right? Always trying to have a genuine relationship is going to go a long way. So I was thinking about this question in the sense of like a kind of a paternalistic view. When I grew up, I have a twin brother, and our dad had four rules. We all know the four rules. In fact, we have it like on this huge sign in his like wood shop that we got for him. But number one is pay attention, right? So you're constantly, and this is again, I'm going to relate it to a manager, right? You're paying attention, you're anticipating. But in terms of building a relationship, pay attention to the little things. I remember my former boss loved the New York Yankees, and he also really loved the little thing on his side where there's like a badge key card. I had one here sitting here. But anyway, I got him a Yankees version of that, right? And it was just like the best gift I could have ever got this guy, right? He loved it. And so pay attention to things. Rule number two is live below your means. I kind of take that to be like, don't ever go in over budget or maybe even on budget. Always come in below budget. And that's going to create a positive relationship with your manager, because at the end of the day, resources are a huge deal in any job I've ever worked at. Number 3 is set a good example. I feel like as I've set a good example with the people I manage and with my office and my reputation, both personally and professionally, it's done nothing but help my relationship with my manager, because he or she can be proud of me. And that's a good thing. And then lastly, my dad's last rule is don't embarrass me, which I find kind of funny, but it's very true. Even as a father myself, it really is kind of awkward when your child embarrasses you. And so, don't embarrass your manager. Don't do anything that would cause he or she to have to reprimand you or get on you. Now, there's always room for critical feedback. I've had a lot of those discussions and I've really loved them and grown from them. But I feel like those are the 4 things I thought about most when I was thinking of the positive relationships I've had with my manager.
Those are 4 great rules, and I'm really glad you brought them into this discussion, even though they're not totally management. It's perfect. They were a perfect fit.
It's a different form of management, parenting.
It's true. Also important, managing your parents.
Right.
We're going to turn to our feed now for a question from Elise that's kind of along these same lines. Have you ever had a mismatch communication style with a supervisor or manager, and how did you address or overcome that challenge? Either of you want to go for that one?
Doug, go for it.
Sure. Yeah, I had my last boss at my previous company. We didn't align for a while, and honestly, the first 6 months, I thought she didn't like me, and I was like, I'm doing great work. It seems like I'm getting a lot of good feedback from my peers, from other teams, other leaders, but my manager wasn't giving me the same affirmations that I was receiving elsewhere. And for a long time, I just thought, well, I think she just doesn't like me. I realized in our one-on-ones, they were very short, to the point, and I was sending these weekly reports that were super long and in-depth. I finally then talked to some of my peers and were like, what's going on? Like, hey, how do you communicate? Is this something that you're experiencing? And some others shared the same sentiment. But then finally, I found the person who kind of seemed like the favorite person, right? The favorite on the team. I said, what are you doing differently? How is this working for you? And they said, all they care about is just like, they want to know the headlines, right? If you were to read a paper, I just want to know the headlines. They're going into a lot of meetings. They're meeting with a lot of leaders. They just want to know what's going on from a bird's eye view. And that's what I give her. And she has constantly replied back like, thank you so much. This is helpful. I'll take this back and kind of use it in my meetings. And I took my week-long, super long weekly report and just condensed it with headlines of, this is what's impactful. These are the highlights, the lowlights. This is where I need your help. And it completely changed our relationship. I started getting replies back. And what I realized was just, she didn't care about the long paragraphs and the long stories. She just wanted to know the headlines. And I think you just have to learn about those preferences. And it took me, again, 6 months for me to figure that out, thinking that I was a bad employee when it was just a small preference in how she took in information and what she needed in order to accomplish her job. And so, again, what we said later, be willing to adapt, learn what they care about, learn about the norms that they have for communication styles, and then adjust yours.
Yeah, I love that, Doug. That's great. I love the turning to your peers, right? You have other people normally on the same team as this manager. And so not in a gossipy way, but in a very professional way, how are everyone else feeling? How's everyone else feeling about this issue? Who has gained traction? What are they doing well? So that I thought that was perfect. Funny enough, my couple experiences where I've not had that match is similar to Doug's, right? I was verbose and my boss was pithy, right? And so I had to learn how to take all of this work that I'd done. And I think part of it was me just trying to like almost justify or look good, like, hey, look how much I did. This is how hard I'm working. And they just didn't care, right? They just wanted. So as soon as I switched my style to just be like, here's the main points, but then be ready to talk about them if they want to dig deep into it. It's like doing a PowerPoint where you have 4 amazing slides and 20 in the appendix, right? Because you're just ready to dig into anything the manager's ready to go. That research, that prep is going to make you a better employee, but learning that mismatch in style was good for me. I even had a boss go as far as saying, "Hey, Blake, if you go over 300 words in an email, that's amazing." Right. And so I had to like really learn how to be a little bit better in that. So anyway, good question, Elise.
Yeah, all great points. And I think you've mentioned this a couple times, Doug, with just kind of communication norms. I'll go back to my own experience again, where my mornings are really, really busy because I'm also a mom trying to get a bunch of kids out the door. So to call me in the morning is not very effective and a lot of times stresses me out. But if you send me a quick text, I'm very open to that. It gets whatever's on your mind on my mind and I'm ready to go. So learning that about your manager is key in kind of helping that communication flow happen. I'm going to go to another question actually from our stream again that kind of hits on this same point. So Wayne asked, what's the best way to write a weekly report? That he usually keeps it short with a couple of bullets like on his resume. But I think what we've sort of fleshed out here was that the answer may be it depends on your manager's communication preferences, as Doug talked about. He was sending the wrong kind of report. So any other thoughts that either of you have on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Did we lose Doug? He'll probably come back. I'll start answering and we'll see if Doug joins back. Okay. Hi, Wayne. I know Wayne. Wayne was one of my students. I think it's an amazing question. So a couple thoughts here. One, you have to know what the standard is already, right? What is this manager already implementing to have information sent to them, right? Because you don't want to just take the initiative just to look good if it's really not part of the system they already have. So weekly report has been in some of my jobs and others it hasn't. But if it is part of it, what's the best way to write it? I would say exactly what you said. Keep it short, few bullet points. We already just talked about kind of the highlight type mentality. I've even given a lot of thought to turning some of my reporting into video. I think that sending my team that includes my supervisor 30 to 60-second video every week, just highlighting what I'm doing, has actually been very effective. At least for my style and for them. But it's I did some research one time about the team that briefs, the president of the United States every morning. And there is a skill to take this much information down to this, right? And so I would just say, Wayne, get better at that skill and read the book that's called On Writing Well. And that's going to help you write the most amazing weekly reports.
Great advice. That'd be a really interesting thing to study. I've never even thought about that before. I'm going to move on to the next question. We've talked a little bit about positive relationship, but something that's related but different as well is establishing trust. And this, I think, could be perhaps the most important thing in having a great relationship with your manager, establishing trust. So what are some of your thoughts on how you have established trust with a manager?
Sorry, I think I dropped off a little bit. I don't know if my Wi-Fi is back. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. As it relates to establishing trust, I think in any relationship, trust is gained by action, by following through and doing things and getting things done. And so I would say that's the easiest way to gain trust with your manager is by getting feedback or getting assignments from them and following through, but not only hitting the mark of what they asked, but going above and beyond. But as it relates to the feedback piece, I think it's important that you're proactively asking for feedback. And I would say the best employees are those who take that feedback and immediately put it into practice and then are coming back to say like, hey, based off of your feedback, this is what I've implemented, this is what I've changed in my process, and have shown that progress. And so the more and more that you accomplish tasks and again, not only hit the mark, but overachieve, and go above and beyond. I think the more and more they trust you, not only with future assignments, but also with knowing that if you're ever called on to do things, that they can rely on you.
I like that a lot. It was probably 2 years ago that I really started thinking of how to visualize or capture what I've learned over the last 10 years in work. And it came down to balancing two things, being credible and being relatable. And I feel like this is a really good path to talk about as we try to establish trust with a manager. You need to be credible, right? Usually I talked about when I taught public speaking, it was in the context of the person who's speaking in front of an audience. They need to know that you're credible, that you have the credentials, and you should be there, and they should be listening to you for some sort of credibility reason. And so your boss needs to know that you're credible. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, in your opinion matters, data matters more, and your results matter the most. So that is going to win you trust time and time again. And you're going to be credible with your boss. But I think the trust deepens when you also establish a relatability with your boss. And that comes with vulnerability, right? And so being able to talk a little bit in tactful ways about some of the things you're struggling with personally and professionally. I've found some of the best relationships with my manager, and where the trust is deepened, is when we're talking about those things as I'm having issues at home or in my life. That has been where the trust has really deepened.
Thanks, Blake. I like both of those points. I would say something that you talked about earlier is important on this front as well, and that's that anticipation. So I think if you're able to anticipate what might be the pain points on any project with your manager and sort of address those before they have a question, before they have a chance to kind of get nervous about those, goes a long way in establishing trust as well.
And I can give a really good example that just happened 20 minutes ago, right? My boss got on the call with me. We were talking about what we need to get done by the end of the day. And then he said, just briefly, but not meaning for me to pick up on anything, but he's like, "Oh man, I got to get that one pager drafted by Tuesday. So I'll put some time on my calendar Monday morning." Well, what am I going to do on Saturday, tomorrow night, when all the kids are in bed? And I'm going to write the one pager for him. And I'm just going to give it a shot as if I had to write that one pager. I'm going to email it to him Saturday night and say, "Hey, I know you've got a busy week next week. You have some time Monday. I felt like this would give you a little better start, that you don't have to start from scratch, because I've been working on the project with him." So him waking up and going into the office Monday morning with an already drafted one pager that he just has to finesse rather than start from scratch, that's anticipation. I'm not saying that to be self-aggrandizing. I'm just saying those are the social cues. Those are the anticipation that you have to become good at if you're interested in progressing sort of aggressively throughout your career into management.
Yeah, it goes back to what Doug said. What can I do to make my manager's life easier?
Exactly.
And it looks like we've lost Doug for a minute, but we'll go ahead and move on to the next question.
He works at Google. He can't even get good Wi-Fi at his house. I'm just kidding.
Oh, man, what a day for him. So the last question that I wanted to center on is one of those things that can be a little bit tricky, and that is, how do you address issues with your supervisor without coming across whiny or perhaps upsetting them? How do you, and Doug talked about this a little bit earlier, how do you give feedback to your manager and address issues the right way? So what are your thoughts on that, Blake?
Yeah, this is tricky. Because my first reaction was don't do it, right? Just don't, and there's some truth to that, right? If you're the type of person that knee jerks into a discussion with your manager because you're disappointed in something or you're wanting to whine, you need to know that about yourself and really check yourself before you send that email. Go take a walk, whether it's in anger or pity, or maybe you're kind of playing the victim at the point. And those are pretty extreme examples. But even if it's just something that you're just a little bothered by and want some feedback or give some feedback, sit on it for a little bit, right? Don't be the type of employee that just, document when you're feeling that way. I recently heard an amazing quote, and I don't know why this has not gone viral before, but I'm going to try to help make it go viral. But if you're overthinking, write. If you're underthinking, read. Right. And so that is something that I thought about a little bit in the context of this question. Right. If you're overthinking about it, write it down, journal it out. What's bugging you about this relationship? How can I get better at it? But just in a very personal context. And if you're underthinking and you're not really spending a whole lot of time about your management style with your, or what's going on with your manager, read more, right? Read more about them, read more about their background, read more books that will help you with that relationship. And then lastly, I guess I'll say is just don't be afraid to approach them. They're a person to do it tactfully, be honest, use the like HR designated times once a year, once a quarter to really make those discussions meaningful. And I guess I'd want to know what you think about that, Tanya. I mean, you're a manager of a lot of people. Yeah, you don't want whiny employees, but I'm also guessing one of the worst things you could have is an employee that secretly is thinking something and just too afraid to tell you.
Yeah. So I think I try to think about the things and any kind of issues and sort of put them in two buckets. And one might be something that is bothering me myself personally or making it harder for me to do my job. And the other bucket might be something that's affecting the performance of the team or the culture. And those are two very different things. So
you're right. Those are way different.
Yeah, I definitely want to have anything that is affecting the performance of the team or the culture of our officer team addressed right away. So I definitely want to hear about those. However, I do also want to hear about the things that are bothering you as an individual or an employee. And I think that one-on-ones or personal meetings are a great place to address those. And I think I liked your idea of stopping and kind of getting your emotions under control. So sometimes I will type out what I think I want to say, leave it for a few minutes, and then come back and read it. And sometimes you read it and you're like, oh, I definitely cannot say that. So you have to kind of work the emotion out of that in order to approach it in a productive way.
I definitely wish I had more emotional intelligence in my 20s than I do have now.
I'm sure. Oh man, I was hoping that we could turn this question over to Doug, but it looks like maybe we're having trouble with him again. He's having trouble with his Wi-Fi. So maybe we'll just move towards wrapping up, Blake. So
okay. That's fine.
I think we've addressed all the questions that I had starting out. So I just wanted to hear if you have any last thoughts on things that perhaps you should avoid in managing up, or maybe a mistake that you've made in the past that you would just caution everybody else against.
Okay. It's a great, we learn hindsight's 2020, right? If I could go back and manage up a little better when I came out of school, I wouldn't have worried as much about looking good as I would have focused more on results. I focused on results because I knew it would make me look good. But the more paradigm shifting that I've been able to do towards actually caring about the results for the results' sake and not for what it's going to do for me, and that humility that comes with that switch, and for me and my personality and a lot of factors that go into who I am as a person, as I was able to fight through that and focus more in on the results for the results' sake, that has helped me manage up better than anything else I've been able to do. And lastly, I would say focus on your strengths. Everyone who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of Strengths Finder as an assessment. I was geeking out this morning because I got to be on an actual live Zoom call with Tom Rath. There was 4 of us on the call, and he was just absolute delight. The concept of strengths is so fascinating to me. We all have it. I think it's the universal diversity in terms of who we are as people. So focus on your strengths, because if you focus on your strengths, you're going to stand out. You're going to manage up well. And lastly, be an Aggie. There is a reputation in the marketplace that Aggies have, and it's not just Utah. This is nationally. People know Utah State students as humble, hardworking, very ethical. There are schools here in Utah and places I've been to some of these schools myself, where it is very, I can be the CEO when I'm 25. And yeah, sure, go be a CEO by the time you're 25. But Aggies come in and they say, what can I do to make this place better? And how can I learn the most so that I can be the CEO one day in the future? So kind of tap into those Aggie roots that way.
I love that. Thanks, Blake. I think we're going to try to get Doug on just via audio here to kind of wrap up with his final thoughts. Doug, can you try talking and see if we can hear you? No.
Doug, we're going to fill out a form for Google Fiber for your house, if you can hear me.
Okay. Sounds like we're not going to be able to get him in.
His would have been way better than mine, so to be determined.
So I'll give you my final thoughts on things that I would avoid. I think sometimes I've really taken to heart what we've talked about in terms of kind of reporting up and offering that weekly report to your manager. I don't do that enough. Sometimes I get caught in the day-to-day and forget to talk about the things that I have done and accomplished rather than just taking all the problems to my manager. And that's probably not very helpful for any manager. So that would be my kind of takeaway from today. I want to thank both Doug and Blake for being here with us today. And I apologize for the technical difficulties that Doug's having today. He shared some great insights with us. So we're grateful for the time that both of you have given us. Thank you for being here on the stream. And yeah, go Aggies and dare mighty things. Thanks.
That's right. It's good to see you, Tanya. Bye, everybody.
Bye.